We finally learned the truth about Ilya Sorokin's condition. We'll talk about that, what it means for the Islanders going forward, all that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, feel free to send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long. And it's always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Well, all the speculation, all the discussion, all the what is this really about questions that have been going on for the past week since Elliot Friedman basically stated that he heard that Ilya Sorokin was, quote unquote, dealing with something, have finally, the cat's out of the bag. And it's good that the truth has finally come out, but the way it came out was sort of almost accidental and inadvertent, and yet, again, it is a good thing. Lou Lamoriello at his press conference over the weekend basically said very little other than upper body injury. He'll be ready when, before the season starts. He may miss the beginning of training camp a few days. We'll leave it up to the doctors. He's skating. That's basically what Lou Lamoriello said, which essentially is saying a lot of nothing, which is, unfortunately, kind of par for the course for Lou Lamoriello. Well, Monday, the team has its 16th annual golf outing, and Patrick Roy is addressing the media and basically says that Ilya Sorokin had back surgery. And again, that is still leaving us very much in the dark. Here's what Patrick Roy said as reported by NHL.com. So the surgery that he had for his back, it's not the perfect thing, but I think he'll be fine. And I do believe that we have such a good medical staff that'll take care of him. They'll make sure that when he's ready, he'll help us. Now, what does that mean? Well, first question that immediately comes to mind is, when did the back start bothering Ilya Sorokin? Did it have an effect on his poor performance, by his own personal standards at least, of a season ago? Last year, Ilya Sorokin had a 3.01 goals against average and a .908 save percentage. Those numbers by far the worst of his NHL career. And again, the KHL, the numbers are always lower. It's a lower scoring league, but clearly It was an off year for Ilya Sorokin, and the first thing that Islander fans begin to wonder is, was the back bothering him last year? And was it one of the reasons that he played poorly, had difficulty finishing the season, ended up being the backup down the stretch and in the playoffs? They gave him a shot starting one playoff game out of 5, and that was game 3. He played poorly, and he was removed after one period, and that was all she wrote. So, okay, maybe, just maybe, you now have a reason as to why Ilya Sorokin was not playing his best. Maybe. We still don't know because, again, nobody's telling us anything specific about when the injury started, exactly what the injury is. All we know now, courtesy of Patrick Waugh and the very little cryptic things that Lou Lamoriello told us, all we know is that there was a back problem and it was severe enough that Ilya Sorokin needed surgery over the offseason. According to Lou Lamoriello, he's expected to be ready to go October 10th when the season starts. But, question 1, why? Why was this information withheld from the media and by extension from the fans? Why did Lou Lamoriello not say anything? And look, I know Lou Lamoriello likes to operate in secret. That's his MO. But he also had to know, especially in this day and age of 24/7, 365 news cycles, where Twitter and rumors and everything comes out eventually. He had to know that this information would get out. And Lou Lamoriello just doesn't like to share things with the media, and by extension, when I say with the media, it also means with the fans, because that's who the media is the eyes and ears for. And did he think in some crazy way that if it wasn't made public, he would be in a better negotiating situation with a Marcus Hogberg or a Keith Kincaid, or if the Islanders were going to trade for a goalie, if maybe at some point during the offseason they didn't know how serious the back was or how long Ilya Sorokin was going to be out, so maybe they wanted to make maybe there were trade overtures made to other teams. I find it hard to believe that if Ilya Sorokin had surgery, that somewhere in the NHL grapevine, that information did not get out. And eventually it did. Maybe it took all summer almost until somebody finally said something. And, maybe to some small extent, not having that information public could help in trade negotiations, even though the Islanders don't have the cap space to add even a player at the minimum salary right now, let alone a quality backup goalie. Bottom line, the idea that the hockey team needs to operate at this level of secrecy is kind of antiquated. And it really is a disservice to the fans. And really, it's also a disservice to Ilya Sorokin, who clearly tried to play through any pain he might have been having last year. Fans are, getting on his case and saying, hey, what's going on? Why are you not playing up to your usual standards? And at the end of the day, we find out anyway, albeit at the last minute. And, all the speculation, all the hand-wringing and wondering what's going on right now with the Islanders, Ilya Sorokin and his health. Well, now we know more. I can't say we know exactly what the surgery was. We don't know whether or not this is going to be in the past now, or it's going to be something that is going to be an issue for Ilya Sorokin going forward for the rest of his career, and even more importantly for him, hopefully not for the rest of his life. But this whole secrecy, this shroud, this veil of secrecy about something like this kind of rubs a lot of people the wrong way, myself included. And I just don't understand the need for that level of quiet about the whole situation. One thing I think anyone who has had a bad back or has a family member or friend who has had a bad back, they can be tricky. With bad backs, depending on the injury, a lot of the time you're kind of trying to contain a bad back. You're trying to nurse a bad back. It never fully goes away. You're trying to manage the pain and the discomfort and the situation, but you don't always cure a bad back. Now, that's not always the case, and I am not, my friends and relatives with bad backs are not professional athletes. They're not getting that level of care necessarily, but bad backs can be tricky. And hopefully, Ilya Sorokin, who is starting this 8-year extension this year for the big bucks, that the back issue does not become a constant, reoccurring, he's healthy, he's not healthy, he's available, he's not available kind of a situation. We don't know. That is a possibility with any back problem. You could be fine for weeks, months, even a year or 2 years, and then you twist in the wrong way, or you do something to the back, and all of a sudden you're back to square one. So we got to hope that Ilya Sorokin is going to be okay, and that what Lou Lamoriello said Friday, that he'll be ready to start the season, is going to be indeed the truth. But we still do not know how all of this is going to play out and how it's going to affect the Islanders this season. We're going to talk about what this means for the Islanders' goaltending situation going forward. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit more about rookie camp. And for our Islanders' birthday of the day, talking about goalies whose careers were ended by injuries, a former first overall pick in the entire draft by the Islanders, goaltender whose career was ended prematurely by injury. Pretty easy one, but let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And FanDuel has all the great odds and all the things that make betting exciting. Check out the odds on baseball as the playoff races heat up. You got college football, pro football, and Islander fans, check out hockey futures. Maybe you want to bet on how many goals Matthew Barzal will score this year. Just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook for all the information. That's FanDuel.com. Download FanDuel today. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So where does this leave the New York Islanders? And that's a big question. Let's start with the most optimistic situation. If Ilya Sorokin starts the season on time and is in good enough health, no need to worry, right? I mean, you got Sorokin, you got Varlamov, you go into the AHL, you'll have Marcus Hogberg, Jakub Skarek if he makes the team, Keith Kincaid if he makes the team. You got Henrik Tikkanen, you got Tristan Lennox. Those are your 7 goaltenders on the depth chart right now. Your top 4 all have some form of NHL experience. The problem comes if Sorokin is out, if he has to miss time, whether it's at the beginning of the season or worse yet, later on in the season, because let's face it, I would rather be without Ilya Sorokin in October or November than March, April, if the Islanders get that far, May. You have Semyon Varlamov, who is a quality backup goalie at this stage in his career, who is capable, as we saw down the stretch last year, of stepping in and playing, a lot of games over a couple of weeks if you need him to. Can Semyon Varlamov play 55 games this year if you really end up losing Ilya Sorokin for a longer period of time? I don't know if he could still do that right now. He's 36. He'll be 37 in April. That's asking a lot at this stage of Varlamov. And, here's the thing about Marcus Hogberg and Keith Kincaid, and no offense to either one of them. They are there to fill a role. If Keith Kincaid succeeds with his PTO, earns a contract, whether it's with Bridgeport or a 2-way deal, great. He's organizational depth. Same thing with Marcus Hogberg. I am not ready to say, oh yeah, Marcus Hogberg, he's going to play every other game for my team. I don't think that is where we're at as far as Marcus Hogberg is concerned. You look at his situation right now, his career numbers, and he hasn't played in the NHL since 2020, 2021. He has never been a starter in the NHL, never played more than 24 games in any one season. His career goals against average, a mediocre 3.39. His save percentage, again, a mediocre 894. If I need a goalie for, a game or two, let's say Ilya Sorokin is out 2 weeks, and the Islanders are going to play 7 games in 2 weeks. Can Marcus Hogberg start 2 or 3 of those games and give you a chance to win 1 or 2 of them? Yeah, he probably could. But over the long haul, I don't want Marcus Hogberg or Keith Kincaid to be playing 25, 30 games this year for the New York Islanders. Just like, as much as I really like Semyon Varlamov, ideally, you don't want Varley starting 50, 55 games. At this stage in his career, it's not what you want. Hogberg is going to turn 30 in November. He's not a prospect anymore. This is a veteran. This is a guy who has played in Major League Hockey, whether it's in Sweden or the NHL. He played some minor league hockey as well. He broke into the big leagues in Sweden in 2013, 2014. Okay? So he's not an up-and-coming prospect. He is the updated version of Corey Schneider, a guy who you at least can put into a game and know that he's been there and done that, and he won't kill you out there. But he is not a guy you want to put out there on a regular basis as your starter or even as your long-term backup. Now, Could he prove me wrong? Could he play some really good hockey for the Islanders this year? Yeah, maybe he could. I'd love for him to prove me wrong if he does indeed have to play NHL minutes. Heck, I'd love for him to prove me wrong with the Bridgeport Islanders if he plays there and he just takes no prisoners, has a great year for Bridgeport. But boy, is that a big jump down for the Islanders in goaltender caliber. And you got to remember this from an Islanders perspective. The Islanders were 22nd in the NHL in goals scored last year. Maybe with the additions of Anthony Duclair and Maxim Siplakov, they can get closer to 18th or 17th or something like that. But on paper, this Islanders team is not built to win 6-5. They are built to win 2-1, 3-2. They are built to win more low-scoring games than high-scoring games. This is a team that relies on its goalies. And I don't need to say the name of Rick DiPietro, a talented, all-star caliber goalie before injuries derailed his career. This is an 8-year contract for Ilya Sorokin. I want to see him play all 8 years of that deal, and most of those at or near his present level. If something happens to Ilya Sorokin, it changes the entire equation for the Islanders organization going forward. I don't want to jump the gun. I want to be as optimistic as possible that what Lou Lamoriello cryptically said about his condition, that what Patrick Waugh said, hey, he'll be ready. We are confident our medical guys can handle it. I want that to be the case. But for Islander fans, it's kind of deja vu all over again in some ways. And I really sincerely hope that this is nothing long-term, nothing serious. And you know what? Since we don't know the extent of this injury and this situation, it's hard not to fear the worst while hoping for the best. And if you want to say, hey, why are you doing this? Because we don't have any information. And that goes back to the secrecy of Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders organization. Don't get me started on that again. I covered it in the first segment. But here we are, hoping for the best for Ilya Sorokin. All right, more to get to on today's show. We're going to talk a little bit about the end of prospect camp, rookie camp, one player in particular who had a strong camp, plus our Islanders birthday of the day. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. Now for your second listen, go find Locked On NHL, where the local experts keep you updated daily on all the biggest storylines ahead of the season. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Islanders wrapped up prospect camp, rookie camp, whatever you want to call it. Good to have the guys back out there. Rick Kowalski running a hard physical kind of a camp, a lot of drills, one-on-one battles against the boards. You got to like that. You got to figure that that is something that, you know, Patrick Waugh emphasized, told Kowalski, I want to see that. Kowalski basically said, we wanted to establish a work ethic and compete level early. Patrick has made that clear, and that's obviously going to be the way the big camp starts, and I think it's good. Kowalski was running the camp, but Waugh was there. He was watching, and a lot of things going on. Couple of players who kind of stood out. The team, first of all, according to Lou Lamoriello, said they're keeping an eye on Dennis Chalowski. He is a veteran. He's 26 years old, struggled last year in camp. This is a big, big camp for him. But as far as a player who kind of surprised a couple of people, how about defenseman Aiden Fulp? The 24-year-old, 6'3", 214 pounds, skated very, very well. Probably the fastest skater out of all the Islanders defensemen at the rookie or prospect camp. And, you know, he did slow down a bit when he had the puck, which is indeed an issue. Fulp played 50 games for the Bridgeport Islanders a year ago, had a goal and 4 assists, kind of struggled, as did almost all of Bridgeport. But right now, Aiden Fulp kind of getting a little bit of opportunity and making the most of it at prospect camp. And the fact that he is a right shot defenseman, you got to figure that gives him an advantage because the Islanders just don't have as much depth on the right side. So, you know, Fulp is not going to score a lot of points either at the AHL level or the NHL level, but he really could give you he could give you some shutdown minutes if he can play solidly, and maybe with a strong training camp this year, he could set himself up to be the first call-up if a right shot defenseman like Scott Mayfield goes down. So we'll see, but so far, Aiden Fulp, one of the older prospects at the camp, looking good for the New York Islanders, and let's see if he can keep that up come training camp. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and again, we're a couple of days early. A lot of birthdays this week, most of them later in the week, but Thursday will be the 43rd birthday of former Islanders goalie Rick DiPietro. First overall pick in the entire 2000 NHL draft. Islanders selected him with that pick. 6'1", 190 pounds, native of Lewiston, Maine. Played a year at BU. Joined the Islanders for the 2000-2001 season. Stayed with the team through 2012, 2013. But the last 3 or 4 seasons, he was never playing more than 26 games due to a knee injury and concussions and a whole lot of other injury-related problems. And it was sad to see the Islanders have to buy him out and end his career prematurely. DiPietro, joined the Islanders so confident, so even cocky, according to some people. By the time his career started to wind down, he had sort of matured and really became a great teammate and a hardworking guy, and he really played some good hockey. Actually injured the knee during, an all-star game when he was mic'd up, and just a shame that his career was cut short. Now doing radio here locally in the New York area. One of his better games as an Islander, December 16th, 2006. Islanders hosting the Atlanta Thrashers at the old barn. Obviously, it's Rick DiPietro in goal for the Islanders. Johan Hedberg in goal for the Thrashers. And in this game, the Thrashers outshoot the Islanders 37-32. But Rick DiPietro, a 37-save shutout as the Islanders beat the Thrashers by a score of 6-0. And again, DP really shining in this game. Victor Kozlov, Mike Sillinger, Miro Shatan, Sean Bates, Andy Hilbert all have a goal and an assist. 2 assists for Radek Martinek. But again, the big story in this game, a 37-save shutout for Rick DiPietro. That's going to do it for today's Locked On Islanders podcast. We will be back tomorrow. We're back to a 5-day-a-week schedule. We will have any new updates on Rick DiPietro. Listen to me. We will have any updates on Ilya Sorokin. Plus, we will keep you up to date on any other Islanders news, notes, and happenings. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On Islanders podcast. And, oh, yes, let's go Islanders.